Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Just a quick little update on Josh Jacobs as news is starting to break around the injury he sustained at MetLife Stadium yesterday facing the New York Giants. And I think it's good news. It's what we all expected. So we'll dive into what the initial reports are in terms of is an ACL, a PCL, an MCL. What are the details of the injury that we know right now, which are still kind of vague. We'll talk about where and how long he'll be out potentially. We'll hit on that. We'll also talk about Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, the guys who potentially will step in for Josh Jacobs if he has to miss a game or two. We'll dive into all of that, as well as Minnesota's rush defense, which is obviously the next opponent coming up. Before we do, if you guys would do that YouTube stuff for us, hit like, hit subscribe. If this is your first time tuning into PTA, welcome. Thank you for making us a part of your day. We're not experts. We're not insiders. We're not media members. We're fans just like you talking Packers on the daily. So if you want to make sure that you catch all the live streams, make sure you hit subscribe, click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live, like for breaking news in this instance right here. Let's waste no time and get into it. Tom Pelissero tweeted out Packers star running back Josh Jacobs' knee is structurally sound. Test showed today and no surgery is needed, sources tell me and Rap Sheet. Okay, so Ian Rappaport confirming this report as well. The team will reevaluate him towards the end of the week. At this point, Jacobs hasn't been ruled out for Sunday's game versus the Vikings. All right. Now, Tom Pelissero was tweeting or quote tweeting his previous tweet that said Packers running back Josh Jacobs will undergo more tests on Monday, obviously talking about how he jammed his knee at on the MetLife turf before leaving for good. So there's no specifications on was it the jamming of the knee? Did the injury occur before that play and then he landed on it awkwardly? That may have played a role as well. But nonetheless, it sounds like that according to the tweets that I'm seeing, and I think we got one more that we'll showcase here real quick. This was Ian Rappaport. And then I think Adam Schefter tweeted out about it as well. But let's see what Ian says. Yeah, Packers standout running back Josh Jacobs' knee is structurally sound and no surgery is needed, right? He's considered day-to-day, but could miss the game against the Vikings. Okay, so we're hearing day-to-day, week-to-week. For me, they both mean the same thing, meaning he could play this week, it might be next week type thing, right? It's kind of a let's just when we get to Sunday, see how it feels. If he can go, he'll go. If not, then he'll play the next week, or at least that'll be the plan. I know there's some people kind of splitting hairs there with day-to-day, week-to-week. I feel like those things are the same thing. You guys may disagree in the comments, but I do kind of see it that way. So again, the Vikings coming up, you're probably asking yourself, okay, what kind of rush defense do the Vikings have? Obviously, that's going to be the next matchup for the Packers. I think this is great news, by the way. It sounds like it's a PCL. I'm hearing people tweet and talk about it's a PCL. I haven't heard direct confirmation from the team or anything like that. So again, if it is week to week, obviously the ACL was not involved. It doesn't sound like, or a very, very minute level if involved at all. So I think this is great news, obviously. Now, here's the thing. Don't rush him back, right? What we're looking at is we've got a pretty good shot at making the playoffs. You may be a wild card team. You may be able to go on a run here and win the North. The last thing you want to do is rush him back against the Vikings, re-injure that knee, and now he's on a 4-week IR with us wondering, is he going to be available for the remainder of the season, right? So that's just something to take into consideration there. I'm going to pop the team statistics up real quick and show you where the Minnesota Vikings rush defense falls, and I apologize for the ads. This site will not allow us. It's teamrankings.com. They won't allow us to take the ads down or pay to have them removed. So as you look here, Minnesota's rush defense is actually tied for 12th best in the league with Indy, San Francisco, okay, at 4.1 yards per rush. To put that into perspective, the New York Giants we played yesterday were worst in the league at 5.5 yards per carry allowed. The Packers averaged 5.6 yards per carry yesterday as a team, if I remember correctly. Now, that does include the short carries by Jordan Love on maybe small scrambles, things like that. And obviously the 16-yard scramble by Malik Willis or zone read, as we talked about before. So again, Minnesota, middle of the pack, maybe, borderline top 10, right? I'd say they're definitely in the top half of the league. right around the top third or on the cusp of breaking into the top third in that regard to rush defense. So listen, they're not a bad run defense, right? They're pretty fundamentally sound. Beeflo typically puts together a pretty good defense over there. Let's take a look at their scoring defense just real quick and see how they are. Not red zone percentage. I apologize. And again, this thing is going to get wacky with the ads. Let's see. I just want to see what their scoring defense sits like right now. Opponent points per play, scoring defense. Let's let it settle down. Get the ads out of the way. I'm sure we'll go by everything that's on the screen right now. Okay. So Green Bay has the 5th best scoring defense as of right now. And Minnesota is sitting in the 13th spot. So the run defense is slightly better than their scoring defense. So this kind of feels like you'll probably, I don't know if you'll necessarily lean on the pass, although I know there's a lot of fans after what happened in New York there late in that game yesterday would probably be okay with that. But you want to include the running game as well. So let's dive into the Packers rushing numbers. Okay. It's not all just about Josh Jacobs, although he is an absolute stud. Do we have enough horses in the stable to carry the load here while he's out if he does miss a game? Okay. So when you look at yards per carry, Josh Jacobs is at 3.8. Now he leads the team with 648 yards rushing. If these numbers are updated as of yesterday, I believe they are up to this point because NFL Pro now has the all 22 and everything up. Emmanuel Wilson is second on the team with 220 yards rushing. No surprise there. And then Chris Brooks, just 10 yards rushing, but he's only had 3 carries on the year, right? So when you look at yards per carry and break it down a little bit deeper, I should say, Josh Jacobs is averaging 3.8 yards per carry. Emmanuel Wilson, 4.2. All right. Josh Jacobs, those 11 touchdowns, man, when you get inside the 20, inside the 10, just get the ball to number 8 and he'll get it in the end zone, right? Well, Emmanuel Wilson had that touchdown yesterday. I think it was an 11-yard run, and we will break that down on Chalk Talk tomorrow. Just want to double check. Yeah, 11-yard touchdown run. That came with 7:39 left in the second quarter. So big score there to keep the Packers kind of in that thing and set the stage for the second half comeback, obviously. So when you look at some of the other detailed statistics here, the one thing I want to point out, guys, the rushing yards, rushing expected points added, the rushing EPA, which is kind of an advanced metric there. Josh Jacobs is at minus 7.7, which is really down for him. Now, some would say, well, maybe they're missing on the lack of blocking and this and that. I understand that argument, but Emmanuel Wilson minus 7.3. Now, when you look at that, in my opinion, now you get the rushing yards over expected per carry. Josh Jacobs is minus 0.2. Emmanuel Wilson is minus 0.5, but you see they're kind of in the same ballpark, right? So I don't think you would see a huge drop off from Josh Jacobs to Emmanuel Wilson. It's just Josh Jacobs can make guys miss in the open field. Emmanuel Wilson, to me, he's one of those dudes that he's very decisive in the backfield, and sometimes he'll make a cut, and it's kind of a dramatic cut. We've seen him bounce them out in the past, right? And that's typically why he grades out so well and why his yards per carry have been pretty damn good throughout the course of his career. Josh Jacobs is more of a harder running, get you some of those physical yards, in my opinion, and he can make guys miss in the phone booth. Emmanuel Wilson is kind of that one cut and bounce that thing and get going. So a little bit different stylistically. I have a lot of faith in Emmanuel Wilson, though. So based on the fact that they're sitting around 11th in run defense, they being the Minnesota Vikings, and Josh Jacobs, if he's not 100%, and I truly mean 100%, if he's 95%, now the knee's just a little sore, sit him down. Let's go out there and try to win it without him. Do not risk it, because even if you go out and lose to the Vikings, let's say they were to lose to the Vikings, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we got a really, really good shot at beating the Vikings at Lambeau Field. I'm pretty sure it was at Lambeau. Let me double check here real quick. Pop the schedule up. So let's see here. Yeah, it is at Lambeau, right? 1:00 kickoff looks like. So seeing that it's at Lambeau, I would rather set Josh. Now, here's the thing too. Let's say he is 95%. And you want to have him in your back pocket, right? If he is truly day to day as opposed to week to week, have him in the back pocket. Let Emmanuel Wilson start. Let him and Chris Brooks try to start the game, right? And if you jump up to an early lead and you feel good about the way the game's going, just keep him on the bench, keep him warm on the bike, whatever. It's just normal stuff he'd be doing, but he's suited up. And then if you find yourself down by 7 or something, maybe throw him out there. If you don't feel there's any, and I mean any, chance of re-aggravating or making that injury worse, right? So again, I have a lot of faith in Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. It'd probably be a practice squad call-up too if Josh Jacobs was inactive. Now let's cross-check those numbers over at PFF. Emmanuel Wilson on the year only grading out a 55.9. However, against the Giants, going in and getting 11 attempts. That tied the most he's gotten this year. At Pittsburgh, he had 11 attempts as well. So in week 11 against the Giants, 11 attempts for 40 yards. He only averaged 3.6 yards a carry. PFF gave him a 67.6. 67.6 overall grade. His run grade was a 65.7, fumble grade a 74.8. So obviously pretty good at protecting the football in that game. And run blocking doesn't really matter. Now, when you look at on the career, this is more of who Emmanuel Wilson is, right? In 2023, he only had 26 attempts, but an 80 PFF grade. In 2024, last season, 106 attempts, 82.9 was his PFF grade with an 86.3 run grade, right? Now, keep in mind, Josh Jacobs' running grades and statistics were much better last year. It leads you to believe the offensive line was run blocking a little bit better last year, right? And I don't think that's any secret here. However, last year he did average 4.8 yards a carry, just 1/10 of a yard less than 2023. This year, 4.2 yards per carry. So he does have a fumble on the year, need to protect the football. That's what's dragging his grade down quite a bit here. Is the run grade of 65.6 this year, but the fumble grade is a 52. Now let's shift gears and talk about Chris Brooks for just a second, because if Josh Jacobs is out, that means those, whatever it is, 8 to 10 carries, 7 to 10 carries that Emmanuel Wilson has been getting will go to Chris Brooks. You guys watched the morning show for Victory Monday. You probably already seen we were just over the moon about his pass blocking ability. We know Matt LaFleur has been very vocal about that when they picked him up off the practice squad, I think from Miami, if I remember correctly, as he was an undrafted free agent down there in 2023 coming out of BYU. So a little bit bigger back, 6'1", 219 is what PFF has him listed at. But you see here on the year, a 67 PFF grade. Now, keep in mind, it's only 20 snaps. However, man, pass blocking yesterday, which they don't have up here listed, was excellent. As you could see him in, I think he was on like 6 or 7 snaps, did a really good job pass blocking. If Chris Brooks had not blocked, I believe it was the blitzing safety that was coming through the A-gap, that throw to Savion Williams does not happen on 3rd and 10. Packers may end up losing that ball game. That's how important that pass protection was. It's something that he does really, really well. And you can see here with his PFF grades, starting in 2023, 82.0, dropped to a 25 or a 65.6 last year. However, still pretty solid grade for a 3rd-string running back, right? And then this year has jumped to a 67.0, only 20 snaps so far. So just want to kind of keep your eye on that. The thing you're going to get with Chris Brooks is you're going to get a running back who knows how to pass protect. He's going to run schematically sound. He's going to do exactly what the scheme asks him to do. He just lacks the natural talent and ability that a Josh Jacobs has, and I, in my opinion, even an Emmanuel Wilson has, right? But again, you feel good about having him in there on pass protection plays. And here's the other thing. When you pop 30 in there, right, when you put number 30 in the backfield and the other team sees it, they probably think, oh, they're passing here. They may give you an advantageous look to can out of the pass, go to the run, and get some easy yardage. People don't think about that. When they're looking at tendencies, when coaching staffs are looking at tendencies, when they're watching the previous 4 game saturation plus 2 head-to-head of the game tape, the film that they're watching on the opponent coming up this week, if they see when this player's in the game, 83% of the time it's a pass, or when this player's in the game, 72% of the time it's a run, they're going to key in on that and go back to film study immediately pre-snap and go, 30's in the game, probably pass, they're in trips left, probably going to be a flood concept or whatever the tendency shows, right? And that's when they'll check, hey, they'll have a code word for it. They may say Frankie, and that means flood left, something like that, right? So when they key in on those tendencies, if they pre-snap and show a Mabel look, what we call a cover 3 Mabel, which is essentially 3 levels along the sideline, so you kind of drift away from not necessarily the field side, but the middle of the field, right? It could be boundary or field side. But what you're saying is, give me a 3-depth look on a zone defense to take away a flood concept. I'm just using a general example here, okay? I'm not saying that the Packers are heavy on flood. That's just the first thing that comes to mind in this situation. If they trigger to that and they show a Mabel, now the defense takes a half a step to a full step, biting outside. Jordan realizes that, looks at the hat count inside the tackle box and goes, bang, can. Let's go weak side zone. And then you're off to the races with Chris Brooks. Those are the things that you got to take into consideration as well. And that's why can plays are so important in the middle of the game as well. So, again, that's the update on Josh Jacobs. That's the current stable of running backs for the Packers as it sits right now. I just want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat who jumped in here on a random stream. Really, really appreciate everybody hopping in. Let's see what everybody's saying. See if anybody is optimistic or maybe a little more cautious than I am. J. Cole says, out of the Vikings and Lions, we have a mini bye after the Lions game. I guess he's talking about after Thanksgiving, right? We're going to have a little bit of an extra period to rest there. So, yeah, out for the Vikings and Lions. What he's saying is sit Josh Jacobs for those 2 games, take advantage of that mini bye and get him healthy. I have no argument with that, Jay. I just love number 8, man. I want him on the field. You know what I mean? I want to see him out there. But like you said, man, if you need to play it safe, right? Drew D in the chat. We need to get through one more game, and then Reed will be back. Hopefully, that's the target for Jaden Reed. It's Thanksgiving Day against the Detroit Lions as well. So great point there. Chase Green points out the Vikings 3-4 is hard to run against. Do you like zone plays or counter and power to attack that front? Here's the way I like to attack the 34 defense. Remember, we ran a 34 under Joe Barry. We also ran it under Mike Pettin, right? Which I think Mike Pettin kind of helped install that defense. I think he's still with the Vikings organization, although Beefo, Brian Flores, is the DC. Typically, in a 34 front, you 2-gap. Your 3 defensive linemen up front. Now, this is in your base, right? And that's what Matt LaFleur talked about is when you're forced into a nickel defense, now you come out of that 34 front. You still may be 2-gapping as a part of your scheme. But typically, the way you look at it is 2 backs equals 2 gaps other than a 34 front. However, do you guys remember how we struggled to stop the run with Joe Barry in at DC, right? 2 different things there, right? You're showing a 3-4 front 2-gap scheme, okay? But also, we put a lot of 2 safeties on the shelf. We showed that shell look, right, where you're kind of showing a quarters look. So both of those make it weak in stopping the run. It takes away the explosive plays in the passing game, obviously. But here's the kicker there. The reason I think we struggled is 1-back sets, teams that would run out of 1-back formations, because you're playing 2-gap against 1-back. And typically, it's 2 backs equals 2 gaps. That's kind of the – it's not a guarantee, obviously, but it's kind of the MO, if you will, on how you want to attack a 2-back defense is play at 2 gaps, right? So with that being said, you may be able to go up against that 34 front and go, you know what, scrap it. Let's stay within a single back set. You might get away from some of these U to H shifts pre-snap to give you an I look or an offset I or some of these different looks like we showed yesterday as well. In New York. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, Chase. For me, I like to attack outside against a 34 because you've got 3 heavier body defensive linemen. However, when they play those wide 9 looks, that's what takes away the explosive plays on the outside. Okay. Essentially what you've got is wide 9 defensive ends / outside linebackers in a 34. That's how you combat explosive plays in the running game. And that's why many teams went to wide 9 looks, including the Packers. And then teams started pressing into duo. So when you kick those defensive ends and those edge defenders out wide in those wide 9 looks, guess what? Now you run a duo set or a duo run, double vertical power, right? So now you're busting the inside of that out, and they've already got themselves out leveraged with the wide 9 techs, right? And sometimes when you go against teams that like to run a lot of duo, you'll notice they go from a wide 9 to more of a 6, right? And kind of line up where if they were directly over a tight end or a 7 tech, something like that, put themselves a little tighter to help get an extra hat count inside. And then that's where you can bust it outside. So 34, it depends more on the edge defenders. Are they in wide 9 looks? If they're in wide 9 looks, let's run duo. If they're playing a little tighter to like a 5 tech or a 6, something like that, then maybe try to hammer an outside look occasionally. But again, I don't know if Emmanuel Wilson is necessarily fit for an outside zone look, although we've seen him show a B gap look, make a B gap read and bounce it all the way outside. I've talked extensively about in the preseason how Gary Ellison 2 years ago, former Packers running back, said that's not normal what Emmanuel Wilson was able to do against the Bengals in the preseason, where it was a B gap zone run, like an inside zone run, essentially AB look, and he bounced that thing out and took it to the house. But yeah, for me, it's more about the edges than necessarily the 34 front, if that makes sense, man. And again, power is a good way to combat it because, you know, think back to the 2010 Super Bowl, right? That's how Pittsburgh tried to attack us. Now, remember the infamous Clay Matthews forced fumble, right? Where he said, spill it, pick it, spill it. What he was talking about there, they were running power his way. And during the TV timeout at the end of the third quarter, Clay Matthews, I may have said Quay Walker just now. Clay Matthews goes to his defense in the huddle, said, they're looking at me. I think they're running this way. I think they're running power this way. And what he meant was they're probably pulling the center and the guard, or the guard and the backside tackle to my side. So sure enough, he'd been watching film. They come out, they break the huddle. Again, keep in mind, we're running a 34 front. That's what Dom Capers ran. So Ryan Pickett is playing defensive end, essentially. So what did Clay do? Clay read power, and what did he say? Spill it, Pickett, spill it, right? And what he means there is be more aggressive inside. So kick it inside. Don't worry about your two gaps. Spill it inside shoulder, and I'm going to shoot my shot outside, because the only way you can really combat power is attack the lead blocker. That's how you do it, right? So there's other ways of stopping power and pulling runs like you're talking about, even against a 34 front. But that it can be effective because, again, you got guys two gapping, and now you gain it. You steal a gap, or you steal a hat by getting a couple of lead blockers out beyond the two gappers. Now you're in a +1 hat situation. It's a one cut and go type thing, right? So hopefully that makes sense. I know I went to rambling, and I apologize. I'm just a nerd over football. Caldwell Corner, go Pack, go. Much needed win yesterday. Let's keep stacking days. Amen to that. Carson, appreciate you swinging through, buddy. Love the content you're always putting out as well, man. So that's it, guys. I got to get out of here. I was going to keep this 10 minutes, but you find people jumping here and talk ball with me, and I can hang out with y'all all day. So I really appreciate y'all dropping in. If you would, hit like, hit subscribe, click that bell icon so you're notified when we go live in the future. We'll be back tonight, 6 p.m. Central for PTA Live. We're going to break down the PFF grades. I am in the lab right now. There's 18 windows open off screen right now on this same computer where I'm breaking down the tape, and we're trying to get Chalk Talk ready for y'all tomorrow. That will be the plan. And as Six says in the chat, PTA for life. That's right, man. Appreciate y'all so much, more than you know. We'll see y'all tonight. Everybody have a great day. My name's Clayton. This is PTA. Go Pack, go.
Here we go. We're out.
Bye, guys.